Hello and welcome to Spring Path's College and Career Readiness Success Tracks. I'm Elisa Ocone, Director of Outreach, and today we are talking about FAFSA. So Success Track 3, Episode 3, all about the FAFSA. And we are going to dig into the definition. So what is this FAFSA? What is the information that you need to complete it? Changes for this year, because there are some common errors and misconceptions. And then another online application for aid called the CSS profile. So separate and different from FAFSA, but because it is similar, I decided it was appropriate to include that conversation here as well. So really all of these topics are great for anyone who knows they will be approaching this process in the coming years. So certainly those juniors who are trying to plan ahead and families of juniors who are thinking about the process and everything that they'll have to do in the year to come. And absolutely for those seniors and families, caregivers, mentors of seniors who are starting this process, right now or in the coming months. So beneficial information, I think, for all audiences. So let's start with what is it? I'm sure you've heard the term financial aid night, FAFSA night, certainly an acronym that's thrown around quite a bit, and it stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Another question that I hear often is, why should I fill it out? Why do I need to fill it out? Should I bother filling it out? In short, the answer is yes. And really the purpose is to see what loans and grants you qualify for. And it is really the only way to receive any federal funding. And I'll also add that some colleges use it also to kind of determine the doling out of some of their own non-need based resources. So again, it's used for different purposes, but again, the main purpose is being eligible for and qualifying for any federal funding. This is a really important piece, and we'll talk about why the location of this application is important, but where you find it is www.studentaid.gov. And that is the only place that you should be filling out that FAFSA. So let's kind of jump right into what is the information that you'll need. When you go into this online application, there are many questions for you to fill out. Here's kind of a breakdown of what is actually needed. So the first thing you'll do when you get to studentaid.gov is create an FSA ID account. And so you will need a separate FSA ID account for the student, for a parent, or anyone else who might be borrowing on that student's behalf. So separate FSA ID accounts in order to go ahead and get started in filling out the FAFSA and going through that process. And you'll need that FSA ID again later on in the process once a college is decided upon and determined. The financial aid office may require you to go in and submit some or complete some steps, I should say. And you will need your FSA ID to do that as well. So make sure you keep a record, or wherever you keep passwords and login information, that you know your username and password for that FSA ID so that you can go through the rest of the FAFSA process. And you will need your 2022 tax information. So for the 24-25 FAFSA, so for students who will be first year students, fall of 2024, you will need 2022 tax information. And there's a really great tool called the IRS data retrieval tool that will automatically transfer your tax information into this online application. And you'll see in a subsequent slide, it's actually one of the changes that people will be required to use that tool. But it certainly makes some of those steps easier. You will need social security numbers. You will need driver's license number or a state ID number or an alien registration number if you're not a US citizen. You'll also need records of any untaxed income, current bank statements and investments. And then lastly, so the non-financial piece is a list of colleges you're thinking or planning on applying to, so that you have that ready to go and you can input that information right there. So that's just kind of an overview of what you'll need to fill it out. And sometimes it's beneficial. I wouldn't say sometimes, it's definitely beneficial if you know what you'll need to try to compile all of that information so that you can go through the process as seamlessly as possible. And I'll just note one other point. The FAFSA is something that you'll need to complete for every year that the student will be attending college. So it's not like you fill out the FAFSA once and you're good for their college career. It is something that will need to be updated every year. So information will be kept, but you'll certainly need to make updates if your financial situation changes, or there's a change kind of in your income, whatever it may be. You'll be able to update that information and submit it each subsequent year. All right, so some changes for the FAFSA. So this won't be as important for people who have never done this before, and this is the first time you're going through that process. It will just be what it is for you. But for all of the families out there who have gone through the FAFSA process with older siblings, there are some changes for the 24-25 FAFSA. So we'll just go over them right now. So one is a reduction in the number of questions. So that's a good thing, from 108 questions down to 38 questions. And again, I mentioned the requirement to use the IRS function to process the FAFSA. That's also a change. And actually, I'm going to stop myself in the middle of these bullet points here to talk about the date. So traditionally, and typically, at least for the last, I think, 7 years, the FAFSA became available to start filling out on October 1st. This year is different. The FAFSA won't be available until December of 2023. So for the 24-25 FAFSA. And there isn't, FAFSA hasn't released the actual date yet when it will be open, and I have students in college as well, so I'm part of this process. So all we've been told, I did receive an email that said December of 2023, and that more information would come about the actual date. So it will push back, I'm assuming and anticipating, when financial aid packages will be given out, or when people will be aware of those financial aid packages, because again, the FAFSA is opening, roughly 2 to 2.5 to 3, depending on when in December it opens, months later than normal. So that is also one big change, the date of availability. I have read also that the hopes are for the following year for it to open again on October 1st. But in terms of all of the seniors out there and senior families, this year's FAFSA will be available sometime December of 2023. All right. So there will also be an increase in the number of colleges that can be submitted at one time. So an increase from 10 to 20. So it should reduce the number of times that someone needs to go in and, take a college out and add another one. If you have that list of, let's say, 12 to 15 that you're applying to, you can add all of those colleges in at once. There is, sadly, the elimination of the multi-child discount. So if you have another child who will be in college at the same time, that piece of the puzzle is going away. But in conversations that have taken place, it looks like colleges themselves will be able to make a decision how they move forward with that piece of information. So I guess the most unfortunate circumstance would be that a college doesn't take into account at all whether or not you are helping to pay for an additional student in college at the same time. Up to, colleges can decide that yes, they will factor it in their own aid process. So it will really be up to each individual institution how that is dealt with. There's also a new Pell Grant formula that increases the maximum award and also the transparency in terms of that process. And then the good old EFC, the estimated family contribution. So that is what FAFSA used to call the amount of money that the formula figured out you would be able to contribute towards this particular student's college education. So it will no longer be the EFC. It is now going to be called the Student Aid Index, with a different methodology for figuring out what that is. So those are some of the changes taking place with the new FAFSA for 24-25. Again, really only makes a difference to those who have gone through the process before. So these are some changes that you can anticipate. All right, some common errors when filling out the FAFSA that certainly I've seen on the college end of things. But again, I've gone through this as a parent too. Using the wrong website. And this really ties into the second little block in the middle there too. The reason you don't want to use the wrong website is because there are definitely scammers out there, sadly, waiting to take advantage of people who maybe don't know about the process and think they have to pay. Just remember, the first F in that acronym FAFSA is free. Free application for federal student aid. So you should not be paying to complete or fill out the FAFSA anywhere. Just remember studentaid.gov as your kind of go-to place. And many colleges will have a link there as well. So if you're browsing a college's website and you're looking at their financial aid page, they will often link to that website as well. But you can certainly go right there to www.studentaid.gov and know that you're in the right place for filling out that free application for federal student aid. So beware of scams or saying, hey, pay this much and we'll help you fill out the FAFSA. Also, a good point is that many college financial aid offices will host FAFSA nights or do FAFSA nights at a school or at their own college, perhaps, and help through the process. Some will even set up a FAFSA appointment with a student or family. So there are free resources out there to help you. So it is free to fill out the application online, but if you find you need some help or resources, there are great YouTube videos out there as well to kind of walk you through filling it out. But again, reach out to the financial aid offices of colleges and institutions as well for help. See where you can get free help in filling this out. Again, beware of scams, don't pay. Another error is not fully completing it. And sometimes it is a matter of just doing the digital signature to fully complete that FAFSA, where people have gone through and answered all the questions, but they didn't formally submit with an electronic signature. So that would be a holdup in the process where a college would see that it's not complete on their end. Another mistake is students and family members using the same email address. Again, the FAFSA itself is one application, but each person needs their own FSA ID with a separate email address. Another error would be missing deadlines. So here's why we'll point back to advice I give probably in every video is check each college's or universities or institutions website to see if they have a priority submission date for the FAFSA or a hard and fast deadline, just so you're maximizing your opportunity for aid. So again, check as part of that initial spreadsheet that you do when you're doing research for all of these places that you're applying to. Make sure you know what their either priority deadline is or deadline for having submitted that FAFSA. And then another mistake is not putting all of the colleges in, just listing one. Again, maybe there are 2, 3, 4, 8 colleges on your list. Just know that you have to put the school code or the FAFSA code for each individual institution to which you're applying on that FAFSA for them to receive that information. And again, it's never a bad idea to reach out and ask, have you received my FAFSA? Again, going back to that applicant portal, when you submit an application, there's often a financial aid tab in your portal there as well. So you'll be able to check and see what has been received, what hasn't. And again, you can always follow up with an email or a phone call just to check on things. But certainly that's an error that we see as well. All right, so moving on or moving away from the FAFSA, there is another application for aid called the CSS profile. So it is the College Scholarship Service Profile, and it is similar to the FAFSA in terms of its collection of financial information, but it gets even more specific with the questions that it asks. It is also linked to College Board, so accessed through College Board as well. Many colleges and even some local scholarship programs will require the CSS profile to distribute their own funds and non-federal aid for both domestic and international students. It opens October 1st, so again, the same date that the FAFSA typically opened, except not this year, but opened, or I should say opened, October 1st. But again, check with each institution for deadlines on when it needs to be submitted to them. That kind of covers the overall financial aid process. Again, a lot of good information out there, a lot of great resources exist. I always advocate for financial aid offices themselves as kind of the biggest asset in going through this process. Again, it can be overwhelming. Take your time, leave time to get things submitted by deadlines. Take time to organize your information ahead of time. Again, take it one step at a time. Good luck in the process.